The hand of God was on our president, Donald J. Trump, when a bullet came within centimeters of his life. God intervened to save our president's life. And thank God he's okay. But what happened to him and to his supporters is not okay. For those in the media and the other side of the aisle who are dedicated, even to this day, to calling MAGA a cult, to calling our president a dictator or an existential threat, or likening him to Hitler, enough and shame on you. You make me sick. The show starts now.
Something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you.
Ready?
Move.
Up.
Move. Go.
Up. Hawkeye's here.
Hawkeye's here. Move to spare.
Spare, get ready. Spare, get ready.
We ready?
Down. Down.
Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
We're good to move.
Clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
Got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay. My shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
That man has been slandered, sabotaged, demonized, investigated, impeached twice. His home has been raided. He's been convicted in a sham trial. And Saturday, he nearly lost his life. And all for what? Because Donald J. Trump loves this country and he wants to save it. That's his motivation and to some his crime. He's a billionaire with a beautiful wife and a beautiful family. He could be off on a golf course or a mega yacht for the rest of his days, but instead he chooses to put his very life on the line to make America great again. But even after a bullet from an assassin grazes his head, he gets up bloodied and defiant, shaking his fist, a fighter who walked off that stage like the battle-born warrior he is. That is our president. The world took notice of that, and the world knows you don't mess with that man. And I won't even compare him to the other guy because you can do that yourself. You're well aware. But speaking of the other guy, I'm not going to blame him or even the sickos in the media for this assassination attempt, though it's not a stretch to say their rhetoric about him has been nothing short of disgusting. But I will point out that on July 8th, on a call with donors, Joe Biden said it's time to put Trump in a bullseye. And this is just one example of the way Joe Biden speaks about former President Donald Trump. There are countless other examples. And how sick. And don't even get me started on the fake news media and their so-called coverage of the assassination attempt on a former and likely future president. I will cover all of that in Final Thoughts, and believe me, I am fuming. But first, I want to talk about how this could have possibly happened. How does a former president and leading candidate for the presidency possibly have such poor protection that a nutcase was able to climb to an elevated position on a nearby rooftop and take a shot at him? And we cannot forget the Trump supporter and rally-goer who lost his life on Saturday simply for attending a rally for his candidate. Corey Compatore lost his life for being a Trump supporter, and isn't that heartbreaking? His family says he died shielding his daughter. He's a hero and a patriot, and our hearts go out to his entire family during this devastating time. And though the shooter has been identified, there are still more questions than answers. So I want to bring in my longtime friend, former FBI special agent. Very excited to get his take on all of this, Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, boy, what an incredible, for all the wrong reasons, day on Saturday. I want to just jump right in because there's a lot of videos surfacing now that make a lot of Americans, rightfully so, really pissed off that this could have even happened. Some videos showing bystanders watching the freak on the rooftop, alerting law enforcement, and nothing was done. I know we can't really rationalize this, but from your expert analysis on it, how could this have possibly happened?
Well, you have to look at first of all, great intro. I feel like I'm getting ready to go out on the football field and do battle with another team. So that was great. But when we look at the reality of any of these situations that occur, you have to look at the totality of the circumstances, just like any other investigation. And so when you do that, you see that there are several reasons why this occurred. And it starts from the top down, but also from the bottom up. And so from the top down, let's just take a broad overview and look at how the Secret Service has changed. You know, when I was in college, before I did all these things in the government, and I was working at a hotel, the Secret Service that was guarding Clinton was there when he got inaugurated or got elected. And these were giant men. They were all former military, and they were warriors, these individuals. And they were incredible athletes as well. Clinton, believe it or not, is a great runner, and these guys would get up and run 6-7 miles with them every day. And at the size that they were, it was impressive. But the Secret Service is not like that anymore. Now it's diversity, equity, and inclusive hiring, where the director wants to have at least 30% females. And even there, she's not hiring females that, as you can see from Saturday's videos, that are warriors, women that are large enough to cover the protectee and aggressive enough to get him off of that platform quickly, and then intelligent and trained enough to know what to do. So that in of itself, that DEI aspect has killed these federal agencies. Political appointees that are not competent to run this. The Secret Service now falls under DHS, not Treasury anymore, so it's under Mayorkas, if that tells you anything.
Comforting.
And then when you go from the bottom up, you add those things in there. Who gets recruited? Who gets promoted? Well, a warfighter doesn't get promoted in this type of an environment. They pick people and promote people just like they hire people, with diversity and inclusion and equality in mind. And so you're not getting the warfighters, you're getting the people who check the boxes. And that's when standards fall. So in this case, from long before they even got there, the training has been diluted. The budget's been diluted. And in certain circumstances, they're moving agents around and supplying agents that from other law enforcement agencies to supplement the Secret Service. So you take all that into account. That leads up to this process. And when you look at how this threat assessment was done, which my company, we do threat assessments every day, whatever venue we're in, with whatever client we're with. I have a small boutique crisis management firm that has some pretty big clients, and everywhere we go, we do a threat assessment every day. That's what the Secret Service does long before the event ever happens. And you want to include these different rings of security. And in a location like this, where it's outside on a fairground, you have to look around and say, where could an attacker from a distance attack, and how far of a standoff should you have? And the only buildings that they had where a shooter could get on top and have a clear shot at that stage was not included in that perimeter. So it was not secured. Right. And because of that, as you can see right here, 130 yards away, the max effective range of an AR-15 is 600 yards. At 300 yards, you don't need much training to hit a target the size of a head. And from 100 yards, it's the same as if I took somebody who's never shot before to a range with a pistol at 25 feet. It's not a hard shot at all. So this individual, he was able to get on top of that roof because they did not include that in the frozen zone.
I mean, there's so many things here. I want to play one of the videos of these other rally goers pointing out the shooter on the roof. The fact that we have this footage, to me, this is just such a colossal failure. I want to play that video where you can clearly see it and then get your take about what these rally goers are saying. Let's take a look.
He was doing the job. I wouldn't even be doing this. I could get some beautiful places, the gorgeous ocean, the Mediterranean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. See him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look.
And it's
There he
not
is.
easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals.
He's
We
on
have
the roof. He's
drug
right.
dealers. We have people that
Right
should not
here,
be here.
right on the
And
roof.
it's much
He's
tougher
clearing
than
up now.
it happens.
He went right on the roof, big guy.
Jonathan, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's really hard when you watch that and you see just these civilians that are standing there saying, there's a funny looking guy crawling up on a building. Does anybody want to go ahead and check on that? The fact that they've got minutes worth of this video, it feels like more than just a failure. It feels like a colossal failure. And even more than that, it just feels like, how could this possibly even happen? And how come no law enforcement, when they see this, they're not like, oh boy, we better at least check this out? It seemed like everybody is like, oh no, don't worry about it. How?
Right. I don't know. This is not the way my mind functions with the training and experience that I have and all the individuals that I worked with. Even if I was a bystander right there, there's no way I would have let that guy get on that roof. Not the way he was sneaking around. I would have been over there because I get involved. The guys from the NYPD I used to work with kept telling me, stop getting involved in stuff. But I wouldn't have let that guy get on that roof. If I turned around and saw that, I'd be yelling at the cop and running towards that guy to try to stop that. But this is the world we live in. It's a social media world. People believe that they have more experience than they do. And when they get into a real life situation like that, they don't know how to act. And sometimes that includes law enforcement, believe it or not. And so people don't know what to do. And they're yelling at they're kind of getting the cops' attention, not screaming. And the law enforcement officer, you can see him for a second, has no clue what's happening because, again, the failure of the threat assessment to include the rooftop, which is slanted away from the counter snipers at the same level. So he gets up on this roof and the Secret Service can't see him from the counter sniper's position. I mean, it's unbelievable. These are simple mistakes that are happening that have profound. Somebody died because of this mistake, and the president was shot.
This is what I can't really wrap my mind around. There are times when you look at something, and hindsight is 2020, whether it be at a music festival or something horrific, even out of school, where it's like, oh my God, we never thought that this would happen, and we had blind spots because we never thought that someone would fire on a harvest festival in Las Vegas or at an elementary school in Nashville. We're all like shocked that that could even possibly happen. But if you think about, as you keep saying, a threat assessment, boy, you've got one of the most visible, public, known, loved, and hated men in the entire world standing in a field with thousands of people. Boy, to me, it would be like, we kind of could figure that this was a potential thing that could happen. It's not like this is just so beyond the scope that somebody would want to kill this man. That's what I can't figure out here. But you mentioned before these Secret Service agents, and I want to play the actual video. It's been obviously going viral. But these women, God love them for wanting to serve the president and serve the country in this capacity. But when you watch this video, it's nothing short of a dog and pony show. Let's take a look for those who haven't seen it. Okay, so you've got the heavier set one that doesn't know how to holster her weapon. That's concerning. Then you've got the other one who's helping the former president into the vehicle, but then is seemingly more worried about getting her sunglasses on so she can look like a woman in black for her Hollywood moment. I mean, I obviously am not a Secret Service agent. I'm not a police officer. I wouldn't sign up to do that job because I couldn't do that job. But when you watch them and watch them struggle there, does that look like someone who's received any training? I mean, they don't look like they could guard a Walmart.
It looks like individuals to me that wanted to be a part of something that they're not physically qualified to be. Now, also, when I saw what was on the stage with the men and the women getting the president up, you have to understand they don't know at that point how bad he's wounded. He could have an artery that was shot and is sucked back into his body, and in 30 seconds, he will die. So they don't know that. They have no clue. And they stand up and listen, I love Trump. You know, I love Trump, and I'm a Trump fan. And I'd love to work for Trump.
We need you.
But
boy, do we need you.
But when he is the victim and the protectee, he's not in charge on that stage when this occurs. I know he wanted to stand up, and he did, and that's an iconic picture. But what it shows to me from the security standpoint is that they should have been so aggressive at getting him out of there from the time he went down to the time he was in that vehicle was almost 2 minutes. And that is a lifetime. And then the vehicle wasn't even parked in a way so that it could exfil quickly. It was parked in a way so it could just leave quietly. And it was, the whole thing was ridiculous. And there was no aggression. The CAT team that came on stage, they looked completely not disgruntled, but disfigured. They didn't know which way things were going, what was happening, and their movements were not coordinated. And it looked like the final test before you graduate from the academy, and then you go get your real training. That's what that looked like. Yeah. And it's astounding to me from the beginning to the end, how, and top to bottom, how bad that was. And even with local law enforcement, it was absolutely a study in how not to do protection.
And then you've got the one woman with the bun who later was worried about her sunglasses. No, I give her a lot of credit for shielding the president, putting her life on the line. She certainly did that. Give credit where credit is due. She was willing to die for the former president. But she's sitting there kind of huddled around him. He's like a foot taller than her. And she's just sitting there kind of going like this. And then the other gentleman is putting his hand up, and it's like, that's his head exposed again. And you guys aren't even shielding his head. He just got grazed in the ear. You don't even know if he's been shot in the head or shot anywhere else. And they're like putting their hands up like they're trying to like block the sunlight. I'm thinking to myself, when you watch them, and would you ever, if you were in charge of his security, even if you were like a DEI aficionado and you wanted to have women there, would you ever have a woman that's that short be one of the people that is actively shielding a president? Would you ever put that person in that position ever at all?
I wouldn't. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or male. If they don't, you want giants around your protectee because they are living, breathing body armor. That's what they are. And if they can't block the approach or the avenue that a shooter can take to hit that target, then they shouldn't be in that position. It doesn't matter whether it's fair. It doesn't matter. If they're not built for that position, just like a firefighter, do you want one of those women coming in to try to rescue you in your apartment building that they have to climb up 25 stairs carrying 50, 100 pounds of gear, and then they get to you and have to pull you out and carry you? Do you want a big giant male coming in there who's strong enough, or do you want somebody who it's only fair that they have the opportunity to do that? That's the problem. And the thing about this is that the training, when you do the training right, you train the stress out. A lot of the stuff that you're talking about with the girl putting her sunglasses on and fixing her jacket and the other girl trying to holster her weapon and not knowing what to do, those are stress-induced reactions, not actions that are trained and planned. And so when you see these movements and you see people that look like they're awkward, like the CAT team member, that's the guy that was all in camouflage and black and came up on the counter assault team that came onto the stage. He didn't look like he knew exactly what to do. It was so uncoordinated, and it didn't look like that stress was trained out of them, and their actions looked like reactions, not planned actions. And that's how you get a protectee out of that situation if that ever occurs.
Moving forward, do you think the former president can trust Secret Service with his protection, or do you think it's time to bring in additional private security?
I think it's time for another branch of the military to be formed, and it's called Special Forces. I think they should take all Special Forces out of every branch and create a Special Forces branch that's separate from the big Army and the Marine Corps and the Navy and the Air Force, and make that into one branch. And then that branch should be tasked with protecting the president, the former presidents, and take over that role, not the investigative role. Let the Secret Service continue to do their currency investigations. But when it comes to protection, you need pipe-hitting meat eaters that are operators, and they function in a way. And I've talked to several SEALs since this occurred, and they are astounded because when we do protection, it is mechanized, it is machine oriented, and we are thinking about nothing except what the standard operating procedure dictates. And when it gets fluid, we're able to think our way through that. And that is not what you saw yesterday. So I think that's the way it should go. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I think if we want to protect our former presidents, the president and the presumptive presidents or those who are elected to their parties, this is the way we do it. We put warriors out there and people who are large enough to take a round, and then the next guy that jumps in there is just as big and capable of pulling them out.
Yeah, and maybe more intimidating as well. There's an intimidation factor. If I'm going there and I'm seeing, these heavy-set 5'3" women guarding the former president, I'm emboldened if I'm a freak. Speaking of that, Jonathan, what do you think the world leaders, both enemy and ally, are thinking when they see a 20-year-old able to climb on a roof at a Trump rally and potentially assassinate a president, kill an innocent person in the crowd? What do you think that the mullahs in Iran are thinking? What do you think Hamas is thinking? What do you think Putin is thinking? What do you think that these other leaders are thinking when they see how easy it was for a 20-year-old to carry something like this out?
You ever see The Price is Right?
Sure.
When they announce the next person, they say, "Come on down," and how excited they are. That's how these world leaders feel. When they see this and they see the nonsense that we've occurred, that we have weakened ourselves, they have done nothing to weaken the United States. None of our enemies have attacked us on our own land. They haven't sanctioned us. They haven't done anything to make us weaker or less capable. We have done that to ourselves. And so as they watch this, it's just like The Price is Right. They are astounded at what we have done to ourselves and how close we are. This is what I don't think a lot of people realize, is that somebody could invade this nation right now, and they could do it by sending troops over the border covertly. They could do it where they just came straight in like a balloon that flies clear across the United States. And they could invade this country. I don't know if they'd be successful, but they could do it right now. And
Jonathan, we've already had tens of millions. Tens of millions are already here.
That's
at
correct.
Least 10 million, and add that to the 20 million that were already here. I mean, they're already here. But my question for you, too, is somebody who's former FBI. There was a lot of criticism on social media when we heard, the FBI would be taking over this investigation. And a lot of folks on Twitter were like, the same FBI that raided Mar-a-Lago, the same FBI that seems to be weaponized against the former president is going to be tasked with investigating it. Now, listen, I think that there are a lot of rank and file professionals in the FBI that are going to get to the bottom of this the best that they know how. And they're motivated to do their job. But some of the criticism, I mean, it's not completely a stretch to be a little bit skeptical that the FBI is going to do the best job here, given their track record as of late. So I want your perspective on it. Do you think that the FBI is going to get to the bottom of this in swift order? And are you confident in their ability to get to the bottom of it?
I'm confident in the investigators' ability, but I'm not confident in the leadership's ability to distance themselves from their ideological and political values and allow this investigation to go forward. I also think that what we saw with the Secret Service is a perfect example of what's happened to the ranks of the FBI. It's filled with DEI hires. I've told this story before, but I went through the FBI Academy in 2005, and there was a guy who showed up at the Academy wearing a Che Guevara shirt. I mean, that was in 2005. So these people with these ideological leftist bends they're at the top of the FBI. And the problem with this investigation is already with the press release that the Bureau gave yesterday saying, given the details of what they found so far, it made no sense to me, except they're trying to paint a pretty picture saying that they found no evidence of mental illness. They have not recovered anything that showed that he acted with anybody else or ideologically. So what are they saying? They're saying that they haven't found it yet. They've only had a day to carry out the investigation.
Yeah.
And they're going to make a press release and say that they haven't found this. Why would they do that? Because they're painting a picture to show the people that, oh, but we do know he registered as a Republican. He donated $15 to the Democrat Party. So they're going to release those findings, but they can't somehow find out if he's connected to somebody or if he has a mental issue. Listen, I'll say it right now. This kid has a mental issue. What we need to find out is his mental issue connected to the left, like the majority of school shooters that we've seen recently, where they are transgender or confused about their gender because of the left. So
or they hate Trump and they've spent most of their life hearing about how bad Trump is. I mean, the kid's 20 years old, so he spent at least half of his life hearing about how awful Trump is and he's a threat to democracy. We still don't know the motivations, but that's another thing I'm concerned about is if there are motivations here, I'm not confident that the FBI is going to give us that information. We're still sitting here with the Nashville shooter and their manifesto that we have leaked amounts of, and we're not getting the full picture there. So you're right. It's very odd to me that they're like, oh, no, but we don't think that he was motivated by this, or we're not sure of the motivation. And then another part of this that I think is rather odd is how long they were talking about getting into the phone. Like that was difficult to get into a phone. I certainly don't know. I never tried to hack a phone, but does that seem like it would be that challenging to hack a civilian phone if you have all the warrants and necessary items that you need and they tried to assassinate a former president?
That's the key. If they have the warrants, then they can go to the phone company and typically now that they've established these relationships. We know the government has relationships with tech industry. Yeah. We know in certain cases that Apple has agreed after a person is deceased or in certain circumstances, they can get a warrant and they will unlock that phone. And that's a real issue. It's a real issue that first of all, that they're sharing the information. They haven't got into that. They're trying to make this sound like they're doing a good job, because here's my biggest fear. There's a lot of people in the FBI and in the Secret Service that I'm afraid they're going to wait for this to blow over, and then it's just going to disappear. And why would they do that? Well, ideological reasons, or because they don't want their agency or themselves to look bad as executives. So they will just wait and wait. And you can already see it's already starting to disappear in the news. We're talking about it today, but I can guarantee you in a week's time, after these big meetings are over with the Democrat and Republican Party, this story will be gone.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of Republicans in Congress that are motivated to make sure that there's some accountability from Secret Service, certainly, who's also done a really poor job of addressing this. But I have another question for you just on the social media aspect of all this, and somebody who's former FBI. So I remember back in the day, if you made a threat against the president and you put it online, you're probably going to get flagged or maybe even a knock at the door, because you can't just go ahead and do that. And I put this on my social media, but I'm looking through comments and I'm seeing all these people celebrating the assassination attempt, saying that they wish that this person wouldn't have missed, and all kinds of other horrible, disgusting things. And I'm wondering if you think that the FBI has any appetite to be flagging this or looking into this, looking for people that might be copycats in these comments. The social media companies have done nothing. They won't even remove the comments, in my experience. But do you think the FBI is keeping an eye on any of these people that are celebrating this? And if not, should they be taking this more seriously?
Well, I would hope they do, but I mean, you have a congressman's staffer who basically was agreeing with the shooting. You have a lot of different people who've been calling for a hit on Trump, and none of that has been looked at. None of it's been looked at. So I don't know what to think about how the FBI is going to handle these things. And you never do when Trump's involved. You never know how they're going to handle it. And but somehow, Tomi, Trump always makes it through. Yeah. And hopefully he'll be able to beat whatever kind of scheme they come up with it for the election, and he can get in and hire individuals, like myself, that can come in there and change this government. That's what needs to happen.
I think every DEI hire should be fired immediately. When they say drain the swamp, I mean, drain the swamp, drain it all. Let's get some people in there that can actually do the job, and feelings be damned. As you said, it's not about like, I want to do the job. And it's like, that's great. And we talk about this when we talk about transgenders in the military or anything like that. It's like, it's great that you want to do the job and you want to serve your country. That's a noble thing to want to do. But if you're not up to the challenge, there's people that want to play in the NBA or they want to be, an Olympian. But guess what? It's not just handed to them. So why we treat protecting former presidents that way is astonishing to me. In law enforcement and military, in these important jobs where DEI and feelings shouldn't matter at all, they've become paramount for the left. So I guess our hope is we had a divine intervention on Saturday. Let's hope we have a divine intervention in November, and that Trump can go in there and make some big changes and get people like you in there, because my God, I don't know where we go from here. But I super appreciate you taking the time. I know that you're in high demand right now, and your expertise is as well. So thank you for being a longtime friend of mine and for giving us all the information.
I'm always here to protect you if you need me. You know that.
Hey, listen, I'm not calling those ladies. I'll tell you that. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
All right, Tom.
All right, folks. For years, the media has called him a racist, a dictator, likened him to Hitler, and called his supporters every name in the book, including insurrectionists and cultists. And now, even after an attempt on Donald Trump's life was made, those in the media still can't bring themselves to be decent. They still can't bring themselves to pull their heads out of their asses and be human beings. It's time for Final Thoughts. The way many in the media reacted to the assassination attempt on our former president is repulsive, but sadly, it's not all that surprising. It started almost immediately after word of the attempt went out to the world, and they just couldn't help themselves, could they? Excuse me, he fell? No, he was shot at. And you know what? In the minutes after the word got out, maybe, just maybe, we could be incredibly generous and give this filth just a little bit of grace. But no, because it continued and continued and continued into yesterday and into today. Saturday night, hours after the assassination attempt on our former president and the death of one of his supporters, CNN had to cave to their slithering snake-like tendencies and say this. Watch.
I do want to say there was one thing that when I watched the tape, I found odd because of all of the heated rhetoric. And that is that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
You in the media have been calling this man Hitler for the last 9 years, and you think him raising his fist to the sky after nearly being shot dead is inappropriate? Quit media, shutter your network today. But there's more. ABC News, home of George Stephanopoulos and the ladies of The View, dazzled us with this disgusting assessment, courtesy of Martha Raddatz yesterday morning, blaming Trump and his supporters for this. Watch and try not to throw your phone against a wall.
President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And of course, in March, he said, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That will be the least of it. He said he was partly joking and that was taken out of context. But those are indeed his words. And you have heard it from supporters as well. And supporters are certainly in some parts angry. And let's remember January 6th. In so many ways for the campaign, January 6th will probably be in the background after yesterday's event. This is a very difficult time for this campaign. I'm sure this week in Milwaukee that President Trump will highlight this, and President Biden is going to have to figure out how to go forward with his campaign and what exactly they say.
Our former president was nearly assassinated, and one of his supporters was shot dead. And these nasty hacks on this nasty network have the audacity to blame Donald Trump and his supporters. They should all quit media forever and never look back. Print media also had to get in on the game, doing whatever they could to minimize the assassination attempt. A shooting? It wasn't a shooting. It was an assassination attempt on a former president. But I think this now edited headline from Forbes might take the cake. You know, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. This is nothing new. They hate Trump so much, even when his life was within centimeters, they can't bring themselves to be decent human beings. And they don't just hate him, they hate all of us who support him. They've made that clear by calling us ultra mega, the mega cult, and worse. These are the same media members who have been lying to us about Joe Biden's cognitive decline for years, editing his interviews and covering for his lapses. When Donald Trump is reelected, we don't just need to drain the swamp. We need to drain the media too, restore some integrity to the profession before journalism dies forever. But God bless President Trump, and may God wrap his heavenly arms around him and his supporters. Those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless. And take care. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tomi Lahren is Fearless. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you'll never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.